2023 is coming to a close, and so for the next week we are going to be looking back on the year and evaluating all of the media that I have consumed over the course of the year, starting today with TV and streaming shows. I will be including all shows and limited series that had a season which premiered within the calendar year. However, with my busy schedule, I want to be upfront and say that I have not been able to watch every single TV show that came out this year. So there will be some notable titles missing from the discussion today. Maybe it was a show I had little to no interest in, or maybe it was a show I simply had no time to watch. As a final note, I would like you to keep in mind that I am not making any objective claims here. All of the views expressed are my opinions, and when I talk about ranking things, it will be based upon my own personal enjoyment rather than the objective quality of the final product, although in some cases those two things might overlap. With all of that being said, let's begin at the bottom and work our way up to the cream of the crop. Sitting comfortably at the bottom of the list with no real competition since it originally aired all the way back in January is the animated Max series Velma. Mindy Kaling stars in what is easily the worst show not only of the year, but perhaps the worst show I have seen, period. Marketed as a new comedic take on the Mystery Incorporated gang, geared more towards adults, this show somehow provides more simplistic and juvenile humor than almost every other iteration of these characters. The entire script feels as if it was written by a preteen who just discovered naughty words and sex, trying to make an edgy fanfiction to prove how creative and different they are. Even worse than being full of jokes that fall flatter than roadkill, every second of the script works to show contempt towards its audience, its medium, and its source material. The only redeeming quality this show has is that some of the grotesque panic attack sequences that the lead character experiences features some visually interesting animation. It really is too bad that the writers seem to see animation as beneath them, because if they had leaned into that, we may have been able to get an actual fresh take on the series. This is one of the few times I would implore you not to even hate watch the show, as it might boost the streaming numbers to a point where Warner Discovery tricks themselves into thinking the show was worthy of further seasons. Taking a big leap up here, let's talk about the show that disappointed me the most this year, Ahsoka on Disney+. As a fan of Star Wars Rebels, I was truly looking forward to this show, and it breaks my heart to say that it falls into the same pitfalls that most MCU and Star Wars projects have fallen into over the past few years. This entire show exists for two reasons: reminding you of events from better projects, and setting up for the next project in the franchise. This would have still been fine with me if the characters were fun enough to go on this meandering adventure with, but sadly we don't have that to fall back on either. Rosario Dawson has been good in other projects I've seen her in, including her cameo as this character in The Mandalorian, but here in her own show, she just does not work as the titular character. Every scene has her standing in extended silence with her head cocked slightly to the side and her eyes squinted as if she is deep in thought, followed by a few lines of dialogue that come across as pretentious. It never feels like she goes through an arc, even though the show wants you to believe she does. Next, we have Natasha Liu Bordizzo, I hope I said that right, playing Sabine Wren. Unlike Ahsoka, there is an arc of sorts that Sabine goes through over the course of the show, but much like Ahsoka, nothing feels earned or natural in any way. The show actually goes out of its way to set up potential lessons for her when she sacrifices the potential safety of the entire galaxy just to see her friend again. But then when that question is actually brought up by the characters, it's brushed off and never spoken of again. Finally, let's talk about the lightsaber fights. In the prequels, fans complained about duels being overly choreographed, but the thing is that the actors still sold those fights in such a way that you could still feel like they were fighting each other. In this show, everything moves so slow, and it's incredibly obvious that the performers are aiming for their next mark. The only exception to that being the duel that Hayden Christensen is involved in towards the middle of the show. This show had so much potential to tell an interesting story and expand upon the Star Wars universe, but it fell short in almost every way, and now it seems like we're never going to get a suitable follow-up to the underrated Rebels show. Next up is the CBS reality juggernaut that is Survivor. In all fairness, the first season of the year was actually pretty fun, with a fairly memorable cast that left us with a satisfying finale. Unfortunately, the most recent season, which just ended this past week, was so atrocious that it completely overshadows any good that the previous season did. Since it's a recent finale, I won't spoil anything, but let's just say that when the season starts with one of multiple quits, I should have known that it was just a lost cause. In the entire cast, there were maybe 2 contestants that were fun, and none of them made it far enough to carry the season. The winner was deserving based on the game they played, but I'm just so tired of boring seasons where everyone votes unanimously and nobody even tries to flip the boot order. Here's hoping that season 46 will be more fun. Wolfpack hyped itself up as the triumphant return of Sarah Michelle Gellar, aka Buffy the Vampire Slayer herself, to the world of the paranormal. Too bad that this show only featured Gellar as a side character for a majority of the season, and instead focused on 4 teens going through the same melodrama that we've seen time and time again on every CW show for the past 2 decades. There were some interesting ideas spread throughout the show, but every episode was far too long to keep it engaging. If this series had either shortened its episodes to the half-hour mark, or if they had shortened the number of episodes and condensed the story, then it would have been easier to sit through. We happen to be reaching the middle of the list, and instead of repeating myself for each individual show, I'll practice what I preach and condense this a bit to save everyone's time. In our first grouping, we have the Netflix docuseries. Encounters, How to Create a Sex Scandal, and Missing Dead or Alive were the 3 that caught my attention this year, and all of them offer pretty much the same things. If you've seen one Netflix docuseries, then trust me, you've seen these shows too. Each one covers a true crime incident, except for Encounters, which covers UFO sightings, in the most basic way. They feature interviews with witnesses or people involved, except for Missing Dead or Alive, which is so obviously produced with staged interviews, and none of the information provided adds anything new. There are no deeper themes to take from these, and there is no context added to anything here. The next group is one I am deciding to call Out of Touch. This category includes 2 reality shows, those being Claim to Fame and Squid Game The Challenge. The single sentence message from this category is, haha, poor people will do anything for money and rich people will do anything for attention. I think that's all I can say about these shows today without having an existential crisis, so let's just move on. I think we have successfully navigated the outright bad or unpleasant entries, but I still think that the words I have to describe some of these upcoming entries are quite limited. Yet I do have enough to say, so I feel bad putting them in one group together, so until we get to the top 5, let's just do a rapid fire. 1 or 2 sentences to describe my overall feelings on these shows. Ready? Here we go. The Night Agent on Netflix. Mindless, serious action. Background noise. Fubar on Netflix. Mindless, fun action. Background noise with Arnold. The Curse. Showtime. Uncomfortable, but not in like a fun office way, just like uncomfortable in a way that you don't really want to sit through. Pressure Cooker, Netflix, a self-judged cooking competition, which is, in all honesty, a pretty cool concept. Secret Chef on Hulu. It's basically just a better pressure cooker. That 90s Show on Netflix. It's a 90s version of that 70s show. It's the same thing, y'all are just blinded by nostalgia. Get over it. One Piece live action on Netflix. Unfortunately, as a One Piece fan, it kills me to say this, but it looks cheap and there's insufficient time to build the main crew properly, which is going to hurt them in further seasons. Kaleidoscope on Netflix. It's a passable heist show. The randomized episode viewing might impact your overall enjoyment of the show, though. Monarch Legacy of Monsters, Apple TV. It needs more Godzilla and less boring human melodrama. Goosebumps, Hulu/Disney+. I would have preferred an anthology series instead of CW drama. Justin Long is terrific, though. I think there's enough here to make it worth watching. Only Murders in the Building, Hulu. The additions of Meryl Streep and Paul Rudd were both great, but unfortunately each season has had diminishing returns. The Mandalorian, Disney+. Better than Season 2, but worse than Season 1. Really relies too heavily on the audience watching Book of Boba Fett beforehand. Agretzko on Netflix. This is a fun adult version of Hello Kitty. It's really fun and easy to watch with some actual, real emotional moments that can get you pretty invested. And with that, we have now reached my top 5 shows of 2023. Here they are in no particular order. The Bad Batch on Disney+, Spy Family on Crunchyroll, One Piece on Crunchyroll, The Last of Us on HBO Max, and I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson on Netflix. Now, I could officially rank them here and now, but where would the fun in that be? Instead, I think we should save that for a separate video so I can really go in depth and explain why I like each one. So be sure to subscribe and come back for the rest of this week where we will go through all of the movies and video games I experienced in 2023, and then come back next week when we will rank my absolute favorites from each of these categories. Until the next one, thanks for watching.